It is the worst day for Bitcoin, or at least statistically speaking, this is the most likely day to close negatively out of any weekday for Bitcoin. And if that does indeed come to fruition, there are many things on the higher term timeframes that I want to continue to update on, following on these setups that we've been looking at over the past few weeks here, now bleeding into even higher term timeframes. So I want to bring the whole picture together and even go over maybe some gold action and perhaps some traditional market action as well. Anyways, I want to start off this whole conversation by stating a very, 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 very important point. That if Bitcoin can trade back above Tuesday's high, which was just above 114,000 on any time frame, then I would negate many of the things that we're going to be going over in this video for at least the short term, and I would be looking for a rally back up into the deep teens for Bitcoin. Maybe even Bitcoin just goes to the moon from there. Possible, I suppose. But basically, that is to say that as long as Bitcoin is below Tuesday's high, again, 114 and change, that I am more or less angled to the downside with a high probability move coming, very, 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 very likely in the downside direction, probably in the not so distant future. Anyways, we'll start this one off as always with a revisiting of the daily statistics. We can look at Thursday as the most likely day to close negatively since this bull market began in 2023, with just under 56% of all Thursdays closing negatively during that time frame, and that is much greater than any other weekday for that matter. The average returns for the gaining and losing Thursdays are actually very much relevant for today, because we actually have once again seen Bitcoin trade up, in this case, to the top side of the average returns range for the positive closing Thursdays, and has so far rejected from that exact number. So we have once again witnessed in nearly real time of a scalpable play using the historical price action indicator. Again, that price point was about 109,674. And you can see that Bitcoin is selling off from that number. So you're seeing it right in front of your face yet again. Whenever you see the first test into the average returns range, high or low, you're very likely going to get a counterplay that is typically scalpable for, at least a few $100. In this case, this is going to be more than $1,000, I do suspect. Anyways, we saw it, by the way, yet again yesterday and the day before, and the day before that, and the day before that, and so on and so forth. You've seen this so many damn times at this point. Again, if you are a short-term time frame scalper, I think that this is just one of the most underslept on indicator scripts of all time. Like, seriously, it's actually insane how many trades that we've caught with this one just on these videos in one of the most simplistic setups of all time. So again, in the other case that we do see the bottom side of the average returns for the losing Thursdays, that would put a price point of interest at about 105,700. So if you do see Bitcoin flip back down to that number today, I would be looking for a bounce on the first pass. Again, not on the second pass, but on the first pass, extremely, extremely, extremely high probability for at least a short-term scalpable move. It's not gonna be like a home run or nothing like that, but if you are a short-term time frame trader, I think that is just, an edge that is, like at this point, just put a fucking bot on it, let it do its thing. You don't need to get too greedy with these damn things. But yeah, anyways, like I said, Thursday, the most likely day to close negatively out of any weekday. And I am basically going to be holding a bearish bias as long as Bitcoin is below Tuesday's high. That is a big inflection point going onwards and forwards from here. It played out a balanced target for us, and more importantly, rejected from that balanced target. So that is a big pivot on the market as of right now. Now let's go into the higher term timeframes here for Bitcoin, because I do think that the higher term timeframe picture is just too difficult to ignore. As I stated earlier, as long as Bitcoin's below Tuesday's high, there are just significantly more setups that are pointed further to the downside for Bitcoin. Now, am I macro bearish for Bitcoin? Not necessarily. I do think that if you are a believer in the 4-year cycle, that you actually should be looking at the highs in early October as the highs for this cycle. I think that is a valid way of looking at this market right now. It's not my personal base case, but I can definitely understand the logic to accompany that. Anyways, while we start off here on the 10-day time frame, we can see that there are significant amount of drives of bearish divergence coming off of the last few major highs here for Bitcoin. In this case, we have seen 1, 2, 3, 4 drives of bearish divergence, and typically the easy target that we like to outline on this channel is that yellow 21 EMA for a sort of short-term, medium-term target. If that one does fail, which Bitcoin's already down there upon getting yet another drive of bearish divergence, then the next obvious target is going to be that green moving average, which is, as of right now, just above $90,000. So, by the time that Bitcoin actually probably gets somewhere down around there, it very well may be higher. But keep in mind that, we are very likely looking at a big move from this current level with volatility reads in the lowest levels that we've seen, comparable to the history of time for Bitcoin, we should be expecting a big fucking move from here. I'm talking like double-digit percentage move. Extraordinary, especially compared to what we've seen recently. If we put this in a context of historical low volatility moves preceding big moves, the only one comparable as of the last few years would be the summer consolidation of 2023, in which Bitcoin traded sideways for about 6-7 months before exploding to the upside for, this one basically doubled over the course of the next couple months, to be fair. So, going from $30,000 all the way up to 60 or $70,000, a couple months or two to 3 months after that. So, we are looking at a big inflection point here for price. On top of this, the weekly time frame obviously has the same sort of drives of bearish divergence, further confirming that. The bi-weekly time frame, same thing over here, multiple drives of bearish divergence, and even the monthly time frame is also going to be having its own drives of bearish divergence, assuming that Bitcoin is, basically anywhere here or lower by end of month. In fact, Bitcoin may even have an opportunity to lose the red moving average, which would be my next major line in the sand for the monthly time frame, initiating at minimum a short-term correction for the monthly to the bottom side of this range, which would again be somewhere around mid to low $90,000 territory. That 21 EMA is going to be coming up, I imagine, very high 80s, and this price action pivots extension trend line right here is coming in around mid to low 90s. So very likely we would see a move somewhere down around there if the monthly finishes below that red moving average, or if we just start to see price kind of crater before then. We do have so many of these higher term timeframes operating together, again, within the context of extreme lows for volatility. This is the bi-weekly time frame. We just don't see this that often. On top of that, we can go over here and look at the stochastic momentum oscillators for these higher term timeframes. And again, these are all angled in the same direction. 10-day time frame showing downside as long as Bitcoin's below 119,600. Weekly time frame just continuing down below 119. Bi-weekly time frame, which closed at the end of this week, still coming down below 121. The 3-week time frame is also going to be coming down, although we need to load it for a moment. Yes, indeed, having a fresh cross to the downside. This is the same signal that we've gotten through all of these major corrections in this cycle. This one showing 124 as a pivot, and even the monthly time frame is kind of in jeopardy right here as well, showing a 116 pivot, and that will be the first cross to the downside in a long time. So at minimum, if we see all of these things play out, which as of right now, that would be the more likely thing to happen, I would be biased towards a downside move here in the interim. Now, could this downside move just be another macro higher low? Absolutely. I'm very much open to that. In fact, that's kind of what I'm rolling with, at least on this first pass until proven otherwise, because keep in mind, the last macro higher low for Bitcoin was $75,000 back here from April lows. So that's fine. Bitcoin could easily come down to mid or low 90s or even upper 80s, and that would still be a higher low. That's not like super problematic or anything like this, but that is a big fucking move and probably very, very scary for a lot of people out there as well. So just keep that in mind that, we are starting to see a lot of the stars align in this case. On top of that, of course, you do got the bearish moon as well for the witches out there, but I'll hold my breath on that one for today. Also, if we go to the monthly HPDR here, I just want to acknowledge again, as we outlined earlier this month, that Bitcoin did more or less reject from the median here on the monthly time frame. And typically when you reject from the median, a lot of the time you play coast to coast with the other side of the 38.2 level at minimum. And where is that? That is just above $90,000. Again, it doesn't need to be this month. Obviously, probably not going to be this month, in fact. But coming into the next month, this probably rises up a little bit. I'd imagine at least to mid 90s. That becomes a realistic target for any sort of a downside continuation move. But like I said, in the short term, like I've said over the past week and a half to 2 weeks here now, in the short term, this is going to be difficult, in my opinion, for Bitcoin. This is a chop range. There's a lot of shit going on right here. And ultimately, basically, as long as Bitcoin's above that last Friday low, there's still a possibility that it does flip around here and do what I think is a lot less likely to happen. But hey, it's always a possibility. Again, my line in the sand for an invalidation, thus having at least a short-term and medium-term bullish bias, is getting back above that this prior Tuesday's high, again 114. Also more or less the 200 moving average on the 4-hour time frame here as well. Bitcoin does that. I think that you're almost guaranteed, although I should probably not say very direct words like this, but I do feel very strongly about this, that you're going to see a move somewhere around 118 to 120ish region, and that would have severe implications for some other higher term time frames. Again, I think it's less likely, but my opinion is not fucking necessary. My opinion is worth shit in this case. or in all cases, really, it's all about statistics, it's all about invalidation, it's all about very specific and objective price points that actually change around and initiate high probability moves. That's what this channel is really all about. If you don't understand this shit, then get the fuck off this channel because we ain't changing. Anyways, for my TA nerds who do understand that, let's go a little bit deeper now. So we outlined a couple things over here with this setup between the red and yellow moving average. I won't go through the full rigmarole on this, but basically whenever the red crosses the inside of the yellow moving average, we get a minimum correction down to the green moving average. This has been very consistent. In fact, happening each and every time throughout the past 8 years. It's not a great trade setup itself. However, it is a really good setup to kind of judge corrective times, especially for Bitcoin. And that is very much useful for, YouTube analysis. Anyways, going over this current setup right here, we actually saw this happen again. The red crossing to the underside of the yellow moving average, and we have actually not hit that minimum target yet after that happened. So again, this one all happened on the same dildo right there, but we would expect, again, another wick down to this region after that first initiated open trade right here. And so even in the short term, I do think you're very likely going to get at least one more sweep of the lows. And that's where things get kind of complicated, because I could see a scenario where Bitcoin does fulfill this condition, meaning that it comes down here to that green moving average and then quickly reverses. And if you see that reversal get, again, back above that Tuesday high, that's my sort of bear trap fake out with very likely severe upside implied. That's how I think it would very likely happen, if it's going to happen at all. Of course, if it does not reverse very quickly and bring and get broadened back above 114 very quickly, at that point, there are targets lower. Keep in mind, this same setup is going to very likely fire off tomorrow for CME. And the reason why this is relevant, because the target is lower. That green moving average is coming in around the upper $98,000 territory. So that would be, again, a minimum target. And this will inevitably fire off if Bitcoin closes tomorrow night for Friday, anywhere below about 111 on CME. So again, a lot can happen in a day, 1 day and 7 hours. But as of right now, I'd really keep in mind that, hey, as long as Bitcoin's below there, a correction lower is just significantly more likely. This can naturally bleed into other higher term timeframes. If we go over here, maybe the 10-day time frame or the weekly time frame are starting to draw closer as well. We can see the weekly time frame is kind of getting there. It's probably going to take at least one more closure. But again, one thing before the next, and it basically just, in my experience, keeps us honest to not looking for like a big, massive fucking girthy green dildo to the moon and beyond until these conditions are resolved. It's just more correction, more sideways. Again, I look at more correction, more sideways as good long term. That's a good thing long term, in my opinion, even though, that may imply that Bitcoin comes down another 10, 15% from here. That's very possible. But personally, I'd look at that as, a more healthy consolidation, more healthy correction, which could lead towards more long-term continuation. Anyways, so we've got that. Let's now go into some other markets. Go check out gold. I kind of want to bring this into more of our regular videos, because it's just been more interesting recently, to be fair. Daily here for gold, I do think that we have a major swing high in place. We called this one out a couple days ago. I still stand by that. However, in the short term, very likely going to bounce here off that yellow 21 EMA. You can already see the daily RSI has gotten significantly lower than the last 1, 2, 3 lows, which price action was significantly low over here. So you do have hidden bullish divergence as potential. And I do think that you're at least going to get a bounce back around like 4,200, 4220, 4250, somewhere around there. Is it possible that this is just going to be another higher low and this one continues upwards and onwards? Sure, yeah. But looking at the volatility reads, I do think that this is a real consideration right here, that this is probably going to be a weekly swing high. Again, long term, it's not bearish, but I do think that you found a top for a while here, pending tomorrow night's closure. I'd feel very, 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 very confident stating that, again, if tomorrow night's closure is basically anywhere below about 4,200. For the weekly. After that, then, do we play at some sideways and downside correction alongside the rest of the markets? Probably, yeah. Again, I'm not like macro bearish on this or anything, still an uptrend, but keep in mind, this thing could come all the way back down to like fucking, 3,500, 3,200 and still be a higher low. So, it's been a fun time here for the past, a couple of years, just more or less straight to the upside, straight fucking moonshot, even more so than Bitcoin in terms of just, up. Bitcoin had some more nasty corrections during those times. But gold, I do think, is nearing at least the end of this current run and is going to go sideways and down for a little bit. Ultimately, probably finding a higher low, but these ranges are going to be fucking massive here. So yeah, just something to be considered considerate of. On top of this, we can go check out traditional markets, go check out SPY futures, see what they're doing. SPY futures still more or less trading around the highs. When I look at the weekly, I don't have any major issues with this. I'd be bullish on this thing as long as you're above last week's low, which is 65.71. This just looks like yet another higher low and a series of higher lows on an asset that basically only goes up. No, of course, they do have corrections. They do have downside markets naturally, but I don't think that this one's ready just yet, or at least I wouldn't be calling it right here. I look at this as yet another reconnect with that red 5 EMA on the monthly time frame, and as long as you're above there, my rule is just don't be fucking bearish. Just don't be fucking bearish. Yeah, you can have short-term downside moves, but they're probably going to be higher lows. Same thing on NASDAQ futures over here as well. In fact, this one probably a little bit more strong. But, when we go down to the daily, it's more or less the same thing. I think it's possible you might get maybe one more attempt at 24,500-ish region. But still higher lows. Again, more or less as long as you're above the early October lows, October the 9th, that is. Just let the trend do its thing. Let the trend do its thing. If it loses that October low, okay, yeah, send it back down to 23,500. That's fine. Still be another higher low on your higher term timeframes. But I think that I'd be even less. I think that that's even less likely to happen. I think that's just this one's more likely to head up to $26,000. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it for what I wanted to go over today. We'll do another live stream tomorrow. Let's go take a quick look at the quantum wave bands here. They did actually take some decent losses off of the reversal from Bitcoin's all-time high. You can see that the equity curve over here did come down a bit, but again, that equity curve continues up and to the right because it just continues to play out that edge, continues to play at that beautiful fucking edge, man. That's what I love to see. Again, if you're a newer trader, I think that this is just a beautiful script to be referencing at the very least. You don't need to trade it exactly as it states. In fact, I might be looking at this open trade right here as hey, you got a couple $1,000 in your pocket right now. I don't know, maybe consider taking some profits. Just had a decent trade before that as well. Before that, actually a decent loss. But again, you can use it as more like a compass if you're newer. It just gives you a probabilistic setup that is more or less in your favor that you can reference. You can trade it exactly as it states. You can also trade it as you wish it as well. But again, it is free to try for 7 days. You can find a link in the description below for Teachable, which will bring you to the quantum wave bands page. And again, you get 7 days for free. Check it out if it's for you or not for you. Same thing for our historical price action indicator over here, which is part of Caretaker's indicator suite. And then also for our other indicators that we referenced right here. This was using the Quant Prime service to actually backtest this, set up a really, really quick setup and get stats on that and just see, by a quick visual test, is this going to be viable or not? Anyways, all of those are available with 7-day free trials. I'm going to end the shilling right there. We'll be back on tomorrow with another live stream analysis and some good old fun times. Really been enjoying these recently. And yeah, basically a long way of saying, look, as long as Bitcoin's below 114, I would respect the downside. Short term, I guess there's a little bit of hopium here for a bounce. I mean, you got some phantom drives of bullish divergence, but I think that until you're back above that Tuesday high, it's, personally, I have to favor the downside, or at least not be favoring any major upside. But that's my line in the sand as of right now. And if Bitcoin reclaims that, hey, you're gonna see me change the tune, especially on the short and medium term. Shouldn't be any surprise to anyone who's been listening because we've been outlining the same area for a while. But yeah, as always, that's where we'll end things. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.